Well, thanks everyone for joining here. I think I'll probably start going with this here. Again, thank you for everyone for joining tonight. We've got myself, John Sluice, and Jeff Wood is also joining here. This is the first time we've done something like this, and so please know that we're doing our best to get information out there as quickly as we can and as accurate as we can. Again, like I mentioned, this is the virtual. I think a lot of us are living in unusual times and being forced to use things that maybe we haven't done in the past and done technology like we haven't done in the past. And hopefully you find that this is informative and able to receive the information okay in a good format. So thank you again for joining. If you do have any technical difficulties, please let us know either by calling us or on the chat. That way we can answer the questions. If you can't hear us okay, if you have any questions. Just to start out here, I'm going to mention and talk through, and I'm going to hit here pretty hard, that even pulling this together was something that as an accountant, we struggled to do because this is so new and so out there as far as changing and not necessarily, I don't want to say accurate, but just the information is changing. That it's hard for us as accountants to be able to get out there and say this information because we want to make sure it's all buttoned up and exact and not give you any incorrect advice. Please know and please be understanding that this information was passed by the House on the 14th, significantly adjusted in a technical correction on the 16th, and then just passed by the Senate. So it's not even in official. The president has not signed it. There's a good likelihood he will, but just know that it's very, very fluid. Things are changing. The technical correction made things that were said on the 14th completely contradicted on the 16th. So if you're out there reading information and seeing information, it can contradict itself. And likewise, we're getting the similar information that we're looking at. So please know that what we're saying here can change, likely will change, but we are at least trying to get at least the start of the information out there so that you're aware of what we're looking at. We are well aware that everyone or people on the call here are dealing with this every single day, that you as business owners are being hit by your employees, either yourself or employees that work for you, trying to figure out what you're going to do and having to decide whether we're going to do layoffs, whether we're going to be doing sick leave, what are the different strategies, what are the different things that you're looking at. And so it's under that understanding that we're trying to get this information out sooner than later. And again, I'm going to caveat that this is generic information, is not specific to your circumstance. So please know if there is a specific question you have, give us a call. The individuals on this that we're talking to are all our clients. That's all this is for, is just our clients. And so we're trying to get the information to you. Call us if there's something that you hear us talk about that you think might specifically fit with you. Some of you I've already talked to. We're here to go through these and do the best thing we can to get you the information. Likewise, we're not attorneys either. A lot of this we're going to get into the attorneys. I would definitely recommend that you talk to attorney with that for an employment law as you start working through these. Especially as you get in with a larger employer, there are some significant implications from the legal side as well. We are not attorneys. We are only giving references and information that is out there. So, and then I was just notified by someone that individuals that are calling on the phone, they can only hear, they can't chat potentially. So if you do have questions, feel free to, you can call the front office too. Susan is here and she's answering questions and phones, and so she might be able to text us and chat with us, or text me information. So if you do have a call or a question, that would also be a way you can do it too. If you can on the phones hover over the screen and you might see the chat icon as well. Okay, so jumping into some of the topics here. The first one is just some information on the extension. The IRS did announce that there is an extension. What I'm going to mention here is the extension is on the payment, not the need to file. And so if you have not filed your tax return yet, it's still needed to be filed by April 15th. The key though is the payment got extended. So that payment, and the IRS just confirmed that it's both the payment for 2019 as well as the first quarter of 2020. That got extended 90 days, so not until July 15th that's due. And so that is definitely a reprieve on individuals that owe taxes. Keep in mind, we still want to jump on getting tax returns pulled together, so at least we have information that you can then know whether you owe or how much we owe, as well as thinking about first quarter estimates that are in there. One note on that is not related to the state of Michigan. So there is still the need to file for state of Michigan. It would not surprise me if the state follows suit with the federal government. There are other states that have filed suit, but they have not done so yet. So as of today, the extension is solely for the IRS and not for the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan did announce just today that they did an extension on the need to file for sales and use withholdings for the March 20th deadline, which would relate to February sales and use. And so there is a reprieve there. If you have questions and we're working with you on the sales and use hold, give us a call and we can walk through what the implications are on that as well. Again, that just came out this afternoon too, so we're still understanding that. Jeff, do you want to jump in or say anything or make sure that you're still working okay?
Yeah, I am responding to some questions while you talk, so go.
Okay.
Keep on going, John, and I'll keep typing.
Very good. So now kind of the meat of what we're hoping to talk to here, which is related to what the House and now the Senate just passed. The Senate passed it about an hour ago. I would expect the president to pass this as well, but it's the second of what appears to be 3 phases worth of stimulus that's coming out. So we've got 3 different phases. The first phase was geared more towards the actual implementation of getting funding out to help fight the coronavirus or the COVID-19 virus. So it was geared towards hospitals, towards getting the stimulus to actually get research, to get testing out, things like that. Didn't really apply to most of who we're working with. We're now dealing with phase 2, which is what most of this topic of this call is going to be related to. That is the main impetus of this is to actually get funding from the federal level to the state unemployment to fund over. So the bulk of the dollars that were outlined within this plan was $1 billion that moved over to the state unemployment levels, so that way they can bolster unemployment. But there are some key things that inside of it, particularly what we're going to focus on is the sick leave. There's the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, and it's the emergency paid sick leave as well as the emergency family leave that are going to factor into this. That's what we're going to spend some time today talking, which is it's the second phase. And then the third phase is just being talked about. It's too early to even say what there are, to speculate from this point. What that is intended to be, that's going to, what everyone is thinking is going to be the larger of all of the incentives that are out there. It's going to be the direct stimulus that goes to individuals and maybe businesses. We're not quite sure, but that's meant to be more of a stimulus package. Where this package that we're talking about today, the phase 2, is meant to shore up the employees and how do we get the short-term temporary stopgap that's in place. Moving into that phase 2 then, so it was passed on the 14th, updated on the 16th. There's conflicting information out there. The Senate did just pass it, and I would expect the president to pass it as well. As we look into it, what it did add is new laws, or what it will add are new laws that follow under the chassis of the FMLA. Now, here's one of the biggest takeaways that you're going to hear from this is most of the employers we work with are below the 50 employees. Some are larger, but many are below. And generally, if you're below 50 employees, you kind of just tune out when you hear FMLA because it doesn't apply. This now is going to apply to you. So hear that if you have between 1 and 500 employees, these acts are going to apply. And what they do is they provide 2 different forms of leave. There's the paid sick leave, which is the first part, and then there's the second, which is the emergency paid family leave. The intent here, what I hope to go through, is the tax implications and some funding mechanisms that are going to come behind it, not necessarily the mechanics of what it means to do these leaves or what they are. again, talk to your attorney or talk to some others that we can give you recommendations of who to talk to regarding that. But the first part of it is the emergency paid sick leave. So what that is geared towards is employees with companies of fewer than 500 employees. And this also applies to self-employed as well. But what it's allowing for or is requiring is, as an employer, that if you have more than one employee, your employees have the right or may have the right to seek up to 80 hours worth of emergency paid sick leave, utilizing the chassis, if you will, of the sick leave that you have that would normally be required under the FMLA. So again, what they're utilizing is that chassis that says, okay, here's how you provide and here's who you need to provide sick time to. They are now increasing it up to 10 days or 2 weeks worth of time, or what they're using is 80 hours. There's two components within that. There's the part that if your employee is seeking diagnosis or preventative care from COVID-19 or self-quarantine as a result of a healthcare provider, that you're able to qualify for a higher amount that you get every day, because it's limited, so you can get $511 per day for that. There's that stepped up basis. That actually was significantly changed from what was originally presented. What was originally out there on the 14th when they first passed it was anyone that was impacted by this would have been able to qualify. And when I say impacted, meaning all of America would likely have been able to qualify. It was significantly brought down in scope to where the employee likely is going to have to be seeking it through the healthcare provider. And then there's the second stage, which is if you have where it's allowable for 2/3 of your regular pay, is for those that are taking care of a child whose school has closed, or if your child care provider is unavailable, close to COVID-19. Why I'm talking about these credits here, and again, what we're working through is, as an employer, you have an obligation to provide this, or will likely have an obligation to provide this. The silver lining, I guess, in all of this, though, is that if you are under 50 employees and you do have to provide this, you can get a tax credit. That's the second key takeaway here, is there's a tax credit that's available, and that tax credit comes when you are paying the corporate self-employment or the corporate employment taxes, which for many of you is 3 days after you pay payroll. Some are monthly or quarterly. But when you're paying your payroll taxes, you can take a credit at that time against the dollars you paid out for wages under the emergency paid sick leave and the emergency paid family leave. Again, we've got a 2-week period wherein employees can request off, both for if they're seeking relief under COVID-19, or if they're taking care of a child that is home from school or the daycare closed.
Can I jump in?
We are going to put some. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just as I'm reading the summary that was provided to us earlier today, the reimbursement covers both wages paid and the employer's contribution to the employee's health insurance premiums during that period of leave. So a little bit of an extra sweetener there to get recouped for some insurance premiums that we're paying out to employees.
We do have some articles here that we are going to publish out. If we can't figure out how to publish it while we're talking, we'll probably email it to the group as well. But that we're kind of following through, that do offer some concise information that we'll get out to everyone. It is interesting that when we're looking through who's thinking about this, this very well can apply to a company of one. So if you're on the phone listening to this and you're like, well, hey, I'm the only employee because I've got an S corporation and I'm paying myself, you could be eligible for this. So unlike typical, when you can't go on unemployment or you can't get any benefit, being a benefit now as an employee is there. So that's one thing that I'm seeing here, is where individuals are calling and saying, well, I want to hold off on doing things. you may not want to. You may still want to, but there are considerations that says that it may make sense to keep things going on because you may be basically pushing into your Social Security and getting your taxes paid, but then immediately refunded right back to you. So keeping things consistent. It is a little bit circular in nature, but that is there. So don't just tune out and hear, okay, it's for my employees, because as an S Corp or as an employee of one, or if you're self-employed, it does factor in and can play in for you as well. Once employees pass that 2-week mark, they're then eligible for this, what's typically under the FMLA, but it's now emergency paid family leave under the FMLA, which goes for the 12 weeks, whereas unlike normal FMLA, where it is a period of that 12-week, which is unpaid, it is now paid. So this applies, the paid part applies from week 3 through week 12, so it's 10 weeks. And it's kind of coupled with the other one. So the other one goes for 2 weeks, and then the second one goes from week 3 through 12, so 10 weeks. That one only applies to parents who have a son or daughter or otherwise qualifying dependent within the terms of what the laws are, that they're caring for them as it relates to that they are home from school or that they are home from a daycare. So it's solely adding on that coupling or that factor. So just be aware of that. Again, to step back again, now that as an employer, you got to be thinking about this, that employees may be requesting this. There is some planning strategies that you may utilize this. So to the extent that you're trying to look to how can I get my employees some dollars that might be better benefits than unemployment, this could be a vehicle, a method to use that. A caution there, though, is that this is using the chassis of FMLA, and so this is not an alternative to unemployment. This is just a factor that you have to be aware of that's out there and could be in play if you're not doing unemployment. So there is still the potential and the consideration that you're going to want to think about is just if it makes sense to do unemployment, I know, Jeff, did you have any questions? Anyone bringing anything up right here? Or have you been able to get through everything?
We do have a question regarding if we will be sending notes via email, some takeaways for folks, or if we will offer a recorded version of this. I know we were looking into the recording of it, and I'm not quite sure yet if we're able to do that.
Yes, I do hope that we're going to be able to give out some information. So we've got some of the guidance that we're looking at here. Keep in mind it's very fluid still, so it's actually changing on a regular basis. So we'll have that guidance. Well, this will be available recorded. We have to figure that out, but it will be recorded. I do see a light that's telling me it's recorded. Again, this is the first time we've done this, so hopefully that works, and I'm not over-promising here. I don't have any specific, fancy slides or any specific guidance that we have just because it is so new. We probably will be pulling something together to formalize this up a little bit, but it's not quite ready yet. If you do have specific questions, give us a call. We definitely would walk through what we can on your specific examples or cases. So
looks like also we should clarify that the first part, the emergency paid sick leave, that's for illness or quarantine situations, and that's for 14 days. The longer period of time is strictly for you need to care for a child because they're out of school or they cannot attend daycare.
Some of the thresholds for those numbers there, again, for the credit. So the credit applies to reimbursement back from this, is for that 2-week period, the emergency paid sick leave. For the heightened one, which is the actual sickness, is $511 per day with a max then of $5,110 per employee. And then there's the other one, which is the care for the children, is for the first 2 weeks is $200 per day, capped at $2,000, and then it remains $200 per day for the remaining 10 weeks as well. So that cap for that is a total of $12,000 between both of them. The key there is it's 2/3 of the wage. So when you really work that through the numbers, The 2/3 wage is you're basically paying someone full for at the higher amount is $130,000 salary for 2 weeks, and then the family leave one is the equivalent of $75,000 salary is going to be paid in full for 3 months. So definitely a good benefit that's out there that in the event that it has to be utilized, has the potential to benefit the employee. The key though is that it's something that as the employer, you're going to front those dollars, and there's concern with that, and then you're going to get it on the back end when you pay your payroll taxes.
And John, I think is it your understanding the credit side of things is only available for employers with 1 to 49 employees, or is it up to 50?
It's up to 50. So it's 1 through 50, and then 51 or greater is when that credit does not apply, which is a little bit different than the FMLA language, which is normally 50 or above. So there's that. If you're right on that 50, you need to be talking to someone anyway, and you want to do what you can to avoid that anyway. But so if you're getting close, you need to be really concerned about it. When it comes to part-time, there is some consideration there as well. FMLA oftentimes does not qualify for part-time. It may, but this does apply to part-time as well. What the wording that they've used is a normal period. And so, while we're talking, I'm gonna try to pull it up here exactly what it is. But what they do is they do a look back, and they look and say, okay, what would the employee typically make during that 2-week period? And that's what they're going to be allowed to do. So let's see, I'm going to pull that up while we're talking here as well. But so this does qualify for part-time employees. So that is a factor. Okay. There is an exemption out there if you have less than 50 employees. I think at first it was a lot of the commentators on this were thinking that it was going to be much more open than what it actually ended up being. But there's an exemption that if this payment would jeopardize the viability of the business, you can seek relief. Now, the seeking relief is what they changed on whether it's more of an automatic versus a special request. As of right now, it appears to be a special request. And so it's much more burdensome to get to that point to be treated as whether it would jeopardize the viability of the business. So there is a potential, but it's not quite as easy as what had originally been intended. So, okay, we talked about the SE, health insurance. One note here is that this goes into effect 16 days or no greater than 16 days after enacted. So when it enacted is when the president is going to sign it in, that's when it will be enacted. And then they're going to have 16 days to put it in actual work its way through. So we're, I know on our end, really busy on the payroll side of things, figuring out just the actual mechanics of how it's going to work in the event that an employer has not laid individuals off. But it feels very much like it's sick time. So if you, as a company, you're used to paying sick time, then it's going to be pretty similar to that, and you're going to have to use the mechanism of what you would use for sick time that you're going to basically add to that bank. If it's a new thing, definitely talk to the group that's doing your payroll, whether it's us or if it's in-house, to kind of think through how you're going to be utilizing that mechanism to pay your employees. I know we've had a couple questions on the other alternative, which is unemployment, unemployment. And there are individuals that are on the call that are faced with just yesterday, trying to deal with, as restaurants or as professional groups that might be required to close. Do we need to do unemployment? The healthcare or Michigan.gov has a lot of resources available that are out there as an employer trying to think through unemployment for the first time. A couple questions that we have had specifically related to unemployment is, as an employer, can I pay my employees during that period? The short answer on that is no. If you are paying your employee during unemployment, it kicks down and they potentially lose the benefit of the unemployment. I don't want to say it's exactly a dollar for dollar, but the way unemployment works is if there is earnings in a particular week, that the earnings from the unemployment goes down if they've received earnings from the employer. So you definitely want to be careful on how that goes on behalf of your employees. For employers that are used to this, there's nothing different through this process as of right, that we don't see anything specific or new out there in the state of Michigan yet. But for those that are new and working through this for the first time, or maybe the first time in a while, just be aware that you got to be careful on the double payments. There are some strategies we could look at doing loans, or you can do a bonus and get the payment out up front and then let them collect other weeks. That's one strategy. Another strategy might be to do an every other, because when you're claiming for unemployment, it's claimed at the weekly basis. And so if you're trying to reduce down the size of the workforce or labor force, you may have one person work 1 week and another person another week. That's a possibility, and they can claim an every other approach then. The state of Michigan has issued out and recommending that you do, when they're claiming the unemployment, that they do it on a temporary basis and not a permanent layoff, because that allows for certain things that the employees don't have to do for going back to work or things like that. So we are definitely not experts when it comes to that, but wanted to at least hit that as a topic or a consideration. Let's see.
Here's a question, John. If, let's say we have employers that already have a bucket for sick time of 40 or even 80 hours, are they going to be required to add an additional 14 days or 80 hours on top of what they already provide?
The short answer is I'm not entirely sure. Some of the guidance that was alluding to a 56-hour, and I don't know if that was actually technically corrected or if that stayed there. That's under the normal paid leave. But the wording I have seen is fixed 56 hours, so it's very possible that anything above the 56 would be required. The wording I did keep hearing throughout this whole, or that I kept writing and dealing with, is that this is just the minimum. So as an employer, you can always do more than that. So whether or not that would qualify, is if you're paying more, it does have to be specifically sick leave. It can't be just straight PTO. That's one thing to keep in mind, because it has to be where you cannot, as an employer, you cannot have the right to deny it. They have the ability to take it even if you don't want to. That's one caveat and key that's there. And oftentimes if you're looking at just a PTO side of things or paid time off, that doesn't qualify. And so it would be on top of that. But yeah, I mean, I do think it is something that it very well could be on top of, but that I'm not entirely sure of. But we will add that on a list of maybe a follow-up. So. Switching topics slightly for right now, we might come back to this, but we are also seeing a pretty heavy inflow of requests or thoughts regarding the SBA disaster loans that are out there. So the SBA has announced that they're looking at temporary funding to come through from a working capital side of things through loans and through lending. What we can say on those is those are there. They are potentials. It is going to depend on whether this particular area gets classified as an allowable area. That is still being figured out. It's still unknown. What we would suggest, though, is it's going to feel like you're going through a normal loan process. So if you don't have your year-end tax work done or your accounting done, you're definitely going to want to push to get that done. The same on the personal side, so personal financial statements. It still is an SBA loan, so you're going to go through that normal process of underwriting. On top of that, you're going to have to demonstrate why and how you were impacted or hurt from this. So I have a feeling that it's going to be pretty narrow into who actually does qualify for this, within specific industries. So say the hospitality industry or the service industry. Again, that doesn't mean that's not guaranteed that's going to be the case, but it is out there. So. Let me see. Jeff, do you have any other thoughts here as I'm looking through my notes?
I was thinking about the enactment date. So as soon as the president signs off on this, it will become effective 2 weeks thereafter. So if you are thinking of shutting down your business because it's recommended to do so, um, your employees will have at least a 2-week period of time starting from the date the president signs this, where they will not receive pay unless you are going to enact this sick leave policy, or if you have them get on unemployment. So perhaps a decent strategy would be to have them file unemployment for this 2-week period. Then we'll have more knowledge of how all this is going to work definitively. And then you can rehire and start the sick leave policy and get reimbursed.
And on that note, Jeff and others, we were talking to to a labor attorney today, and they were pointing out, and definitely think that you should talk to your attorney about it, but that there is consideration of, if you're thinking or debating about laying off, that you may want to go through that process before this gets enacted, because of the other implications of the FMLA and labor class and rights that come along with that. And so definitely, if it is a consideration for doing unemployment, you may want to do that before this gets enacted. That way that it can't be viewed as retaliation to avoid these particular payments. So, especially for those that are above the 50 mark, because if you're below the 50 mark, it's just I don't want to say just, but it's a timing difference for when this payment's going to come through. It'll work its way through. I might spend a little bit of time on the mechanics of that here shortly. But if you're greater than 50 employees, this is coming at the cost of your you basically, because you're not going to get the credit back, and the employees have the right to ask for this time off. And so if you are thinking of going through an employment process or unemployment process, you might look to do that sooner than later. Again, on the mechanics to get these back, I highlighted it earlier, but I'm going to kind of hit this and stress this again. This credit comes in the form of a deduction or a credit against your payroll taxes that you're paying as a company. And so let's say you have payroll on Friday and you are withholding dollars for that payroll for your payroll taxes. You will offset these this paid sick leave repayment and the emergency paid family leave directly when you're putting those payments in. So for some of you, that's it's 3 days after you make the payroll. For some of you that are on like a trust account, it's going to be right when you pull the dollars or we pull the dollars. If you're paid monthly or quarterly, then you're going to hold those dollars out a little bit longer, or it's going to be a little bit longer before you feel that benefit, because you're used to holding those dollars out until the end of that quarter. There is the potential that you're going to end up putting more dollars out up front and then have to ask for a credit back. And that's going to come as if the actual wage cost, that would be an eligible deduction, is greater than what you're paying in payroll taxes. Then that is going to come back via a credit as an overpayment on the unemployment, or on the payroll taxes. That's on a quarterly filing. So just be aware that I see that happening actually more so on the smaller employers than some of the medium-sized employers, where you might have a significant part of your employee base that's applying for this, and you end up paying more dollars out than you actually do in payroll taxes. On the payroll taxes, the key there is it's just the employer portion, not the employee portion of the payroll taxes. So that's a factor there. Does anyone else have any other questions that we can answer, specifically as it relates to this, or anything else that's coming up through as we're thinking through things? Okay. Our goal here with this is to keep this fairly short. I'm going to again highlight the fact that this is new information. We may very possibly have given information that's incorrect on this. We hope we did not, but please understand that there's a possibility. And also know that this is generic in nature. Each one of you that are on this call, there's a reason you're here, is because it does apply to you. Give us a call. We could try to help through what we can in your specific circumstances to walk you through the implications, both from the unemployment side as well as from the payroll side. And then knowing that there is impact on the actual filing of your tax returns. Again, that comes through on the extension that we talked about too. So just kind of summarizing there, we've got the federal extension that the payment was extended but not the deadline. That if you do have employees, great. If you're an employer between 1 and 500, and the president does sign this in law, this is going to impact you, and it is going to be something that you're going to have to think about and work through. So I would definitely start thinking about it sooner than later, because it's going to come and hit you sooner. And it can be a benefit, but it also can be a burden. So think through these and how does that going to impact from a cash flow point of view. And then, lastly on this is if unemployment is something that you're definitely looking at, you're going to want to probably think about that sooner than later. Think about cash flow, think about other mechanisms that need to be in place, and that might be something that you need to look at soon. So please feel free to give us a call if there are specific questions. We're here. We'll be here for a little while yet this evening. We are here in the office. We're practicing safe distancing, if you will, but we are here. We're available via video chat or via phone call too. So don't hesitate to call us anytime here. We're doing everything we can to keep up with all of this and get information out to you. We will follow this up with an email with some of the guidance that we talked about that is out there. And again, please don't hesitate to call with any questions. So thanks everyone for participating.